You know, empathy is one of the most beautiful human qualities we have. It's what allows us to see the world through someone else's eyes, to feel their pain, to walk beside them in their struggle. But here's a hard truth: not everyone values that gift. Some people, especially toxic people, don't just fail to appreciate it, they learn how to weaponize it. They twist your empathy into a tool they can use against you. I remember sitting across from someone years ago, listening to them share their hardship. Every part of me wanted to help, to lift them up, but over time I noticed a pattern. Every interaction left me feeling drained, guilty, and somehow responsible for their happiness. That's when I realized empathy without boundaries isn't compassion, it's self-betrayal. Research shows that toxic individuals are skilled at identifying highly empathetic people. They recognize our willingness to give the benefit of the doubt, to understand before judging, and they use it as leverage. If you've ever found yourself making excuses for someone's hurtful behavior because they've been through a lot, you've experienced it. So how do we keep our empathy intact without letting it be turned against us? Spot emotional hook tactics early. Toxic people rarely start with the harmful behavior that will eventually drain you. They start with a story designed to make you feel something quickly, and not just any emotion, but one that moves you to act. Sympathy, urgency, protectiveness. They know that if they can get you emotionally invested fast, your natural instincts to nurture and help will kick in before your logical brain has a chance to ask, wait, what's really going on here? I've seen this play out so many times in my own life and in the stories people have shared with me. It's the coworker who comes to you on their first week pouring out how everyone here has been awful to them in past jobs, and you instantly decide you'll be their safe person. It's the friend who only calls in crisis mode, weaving a tale so heavy that you clear your calendar without a second thought. And here's the tricky part: sometimes their story is true. Sometimes they really have been through awful things. But toxic people don't share to connect, they share to control. They're not building trust, they're recruiting loyalty before you've even had a chance to see their full character. When you get pulled in this way, something subtle happens. You stop noticing the red flags. You excuse bad behavior because you've already built an image of them as the wounded one who just needs understanding. And from there, the empathy loop begins. You keep giving, they keep taking, and the cost gets higher each time. The research on persuasion shows that our brains make emotional decisions before rational ones. We feel first, then justify. Toxic people, consciously or not, lean into that. They present the feelings first because they know that once your heart says yes, your mind will work hard to support that yes, even against the evidence. So spotting these hooks means slowing yourself down in the moment. When someone shares a deep, moving story right away, especially if it comes packaged with an expectation, your time, your loyalty, your sympathy, pause. Ask yourself, am I responding to the whole person or just the part they've chosen to show me? That pause alone can save you from getting tangled in a web that was never about mutual care in the first place. Watch for selective vulnerability. It's one of the most deceptive tools in a toxic person's playbook. They don't come at you with an open heart, willing to share the messy, unpolished truth about themselves. Instead, they offer you just enough pain to pull you in, but never enough truth to take responsibility. It's like they've mastered the art of giving you the tearful prologue without ever revealing the rest of the book. Here's what I mean. Healthy vulnerability is about connection. It's two people showing up with their whole selves, messy, flawed, imperfect, and saying, this is me. I trust you enough to let you see it. Selective vulnerability, on the other hand, isn't about connection at all. It's about strategy. It's using personal details as currency to get what they want from you. And the hard part is, at first, it feels exactly like genuine openness. Someone might share a deeply moving story about a betrayal, a loss, or a hardship. You feel honored they would tell you something so personal. You lean in, you feel protective. You think, I want to be the safe person they can count on. But over time, you notice something strange. You only ever hear about the things that cast them as the victim. You never hear about the role they played, the mistakes they made, or the ways they're working to grow. When I've seen this dynamic in my own life, the pattern is almost always the same. There's a wave of intimacy early on. You feel like you're getting close fast, but then when it's time for them to be accountable, the openness vanishes. The same person who shared all those intimate struggles suddenly becomes vague, defensive, or turns the spotlight back onto your flaws. And this isn't accidental. Selective vulnerability works because it makes you feel connected without actually creating mutual trust. It creates a one-way bond. You feel responsible for them, but they never have to extend the same depth or honesty back to you. One of the most telling signs is this: when you offer your own vulnerability, do they hold it with care or do they use it against you later? Because someone who's genuinely open will treat your honesty as a privilege, not ammunition. The truth is, we can't confuse vulnerability with oversharing, and we can't confuse selective vulnerability with intimacy. Just because someone hands you a piece of their story doesn't mean you're seeing the whole picture. Sometimes it's the piece they want you to see, carefully chosen to get your empathy, your trust, or your loyalty without ever giving you the honesty that real connection requires. Guilt is their favorite lever. If you've ever tried to pull back from someone toxic, maybe you said no to a request, maybe you set a limit on your time, you probably felt it almost instantly, that little knot in your stomach, the quiet voice saying, maybe I'm being selfish, maybe I'm a bad friend, maybe I'm overreacting. That's not by accident. For toxic people, guilt isn't just an emotional response, it's a tool. And they know exactly how to use it. Here's the thing about guilt. It's one of the fastest ways to control a person who cares. If you have empathy, you're wired to want to make things right. So when someone frames your boundaries as cruelty, your brain jumps into repair mode. You start thinking about what you can give or do to make the guilt go away, instead of asking whether that guilt even belongs to you in the first place. I have sat with people who've told me stories that sound almost scripted in their predictability. They finally told a family member, I can't talk about this right now, I need some space. And the response wasn't understanding. It was, wow, after everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me? Or they told a coworker they couldn't cover a shift, and suddenly they were painted as the team's weak link. The message is always the same. Your needs are a problem, and you should feel bad for having them. And it works. Because guilt is deeply uncomfortable. For most of us, sitting in guilt feels like sitting in a room where the walls are slowly closing in. We'll do almost anything to escape it. Toxic people bank on that. They know that if they can make you feel bad about protecting yourself, you'll rush to prove your goodness, often by giving them exactly what they wanted in the first place. But here's the truth. Not all guilt is real. Some guilt is manufactured. It's planted, watered, and carefully nurtured by someone who benefits from you feeling it. And the way you can tell the difference is by asking one simple question: is this guilt pointing me toward growth, or is it pulling me into compliance? Real guilt, healthy guilt, shows up when our actions violate our values. Manufactured guilt shows up when our actions violate someone else's agenda. When we start seeing guilt through that lens, it loses its power to control us. You can still care about someone's feelings without letting them decide your boundaries. And you can still be a deeply empathetic person while refusing to carry guilt that was never yours to begin with. Empathy without accountability feeds toxicity. It's a hard truth because for most of us, empathy is about grace. It's about understanding that people are complex, that their mistakes are often rooted in pain, fear, or experiences we can't see. But when someone consistently harms you and never takes responsibility for their actions, empathy can shift from being a bridge to understanding into a weapon they use to keep you quiet. And here's the kicker. They'll often thank you for being so understanding while doing nothing to change. I've seen this dynamic more times than I can count. A friend is repeatedly hurt by a partner who apologizes just enough to smooth things over, but not enough to address the real behavior. The partner says things like, I've had a rough childhood, or I'm just under a lot of stress right now. And because my friend is empathetic, she accepts that explanation. But weeks later, the same hurtful actions happen again. The story changes slightly, but the behavior doesn't. The research on relationships shows that empathy and accountability are not opposites, they're partners. Empathy says, I see your pain and I understand your struggle. Accountability says, and because I care, I'm going to expect you to take responsibility and work on changing. Without that second part, empathy becomes a free pass for bad behavior. And toxic people understand this gap. They rely on you to overemphasize compassion while underemphasizing responsibility. They know that if they can keep you feeling sorry for them, you'll hesitate to hold them accountable. They'll keep you in a loop where you're always giving grace and they're always taking it without ever giving growth in return. The tricky part is that holding someone accountable when you care about them can feel almost cruel at first. It's uncomfortable to look someone in the eye and say, I know you're hurting, but that doesn't give you the right to hurt me. It feels like you're abandoning them, when in reality, you're offering them the chance to grow. But here's what I've learned. Real empathy doesn't mean lowering the bar for someone's behavior. It means standing beside them while they reach it. It's not saying, I'll love you no matter what you do to me. It's saying, I'll love you enough to believe you can do better. When empathy and accountability work together, they create relationships that are honest, respectful, and resilient. But when empathy stands alone, it can turn into quiet permission for harm to continue. And that's when the very thing meant to heal, your compassion, becomes the thing that keeps you stuck. You can be kind without abandoning yourself. Toxic people love to blur that line. They'll tell you that saying no is cruel, that protecting your time is selfish, that stepping back when you're overwhelmed means you've stopped caring. And if you're someone who deeply values kindness, that message can cut right into your identity. You start thinking, if I set this boundary, maybe I'm not as compassionate as I thought I was. That's exactly the confusion they're counting on. Real kindness doesn't require you to hand over your well-being as proof that you care. In fact, when kindness comes at the cost of your emotional health, it stops being kindness. It becomes self-abandonment. And here's the thing about self-abandonment. It's a slow erosion. It doesn't happen in one big moment. It happens in little ways. A yes when you need to speak, a smile when you're hurting inside. I've had conversations with people who told me they stayed in unhealthy situations for years because they thought leaving would make them the bad guy. They kept showing up, giving more and more of themselves, all in the name of being kind. But kindness that's driven by fear of being judged, fear of being called selfish, isn't real kindness. It's a survival tactic. One of the hardest shifts to make is realizing that you can care about someone and still refuse to be mistreated by them. Those two truths can live side by side. You can say, I want good things for you, and also say, I won't let you take from me in ways that harm me. That's not coldness. That's clarity. And clarity is an act of kindness to yourself and, ironically, to them. It's not easy, especially if you've spent your life measuring your worth by how much you can give. At first, choosing yourself feels wrong, even disloyal. But the truth is, when we stop abandoning ourselves, we actually become more available for the relationships that are healthy, mutual, and nourishing. We can show up with more joy, more patience, and more generosity because we're no longer pouring from an empty cup. Kindness without self-respect will drain you. But kindness with boundaries, that's sustainable. That's love, both for yourself and for the people who deserve to be in your life. And that's the kind of kindness toxic people can't twist into something it was never meant to be. Here's the truth. Empathy is a gift, but it's not meant to be handed to everyone without question. It's meant to be shared with people who honor it, protect it, and give it back in return. Toxic people will try to twist it, stretch it, and turn it against you, but you are not powerless in that equation. You have the right to pause before you give, to ask yourself if your compassion is helping or if it's harming you. You have the right to expect accountability. You have the right to set boundaries that keep your kindness honest and your heart intact. When you protect your empathy, you don't become less caring. You become a better steward of your care. You create space for relationships that lift you up instead of drain you. You start living from a place of strength instead of depletion. And maybe most importantly, you show others through your example that love, compassion, and understanding can exist alongside self-respect. That's how you keep your empathy from becoming a weapon in the wrong hands. That's how you turn it into a force for real connection and healing. Take care of your gift, use it wisely, and remember, the people who deserve your empathy will never ask you to abandon yourself to give it. Good luck. You've got this.